I can't stand it when she responds to my questions with more questions. She does it instinctively every single time, no matter what I ask or what kind of answer I'm looking for. It's always the same. Megan, what's for dinner? Does it look like I cooked? Megan, where do you want the chair moved? Harold, where did I say I wanted it? Megan, you look great in that lingerie. How about we mess up the sheets? What? Don't I look great in my flannel PJs too? It doesn't matter what the topic is, my questions are always met with another question. The only time she couldn't respond that way was the last question I ever asked her. What was the question? Just 6 little words with a question mark, but the hardest to answer. Why would I want to stay? That's the one question she couldn't reply to. And deep down, I already knew she wouldn't be able to. Cheaters never have an answer. They give the same old excuses, but when it comes down to it, they know the truth. It's just a matter of getting them to face it. I should have seen this coming from the beginning. My marriage was doomed from the start. I should have listened to my dad and stuck to the rules. My father shared with me 10 rules he believed every man should live by. 1. Life is fun until you mess it up. 2. Work only feels hard when you're not motivated. 3. If you want to know what your wife will look like in 20 years, take a look at her mother. 4. It takes a strong woman not become her mother. 5. Friends come and go, but true brothers are forever. 6. Never give your wife all the money. 7. No affair is worth losing half of everything, no matter what the judge says. 8. Physical looks may fade, but true beauty lasts forever. 9. If something looks, walks, and sounds like a duck, it's a duck. 10. No woman is worth dying for or going to jail over, so always plan carefully, think through your revenge, and leave no trace behind. My dad always said that if my mom ever disappeared and her purse was left behind, it meant one of 2 things. Either she ran away or he drove her away. And if he drove her away, she wouldn't take her purse because he wasn't giving her anything. He would always speak loudly enough for my mom to hear and say, "Son, she'll leave with what she brought into this marriage and nothing more." I used to wonder what could make a man so bitter. That was one of life's hard lessons I'd come to understand later on. I'm not one of those who shares their life story, so I'll be brief. I was born in North Texas into a good family, but my father was harsh with me, giving me trouble every day, sometimes because I deserved it, and sometimes just like that. My mother was a reliable support for our family. My sisters Kelly and Ann have always been there for me and my younger brother Carlton. Carlton is a bit of an oddball, but overall he's a good guy. There's also Megan. I first met Megan in 8th grade. For me, it was love at first sight. We only officially met in our sophomore year of college, but she's been my girlfriend ever since. For those who are wondering why it took us so long to start dating, it's better to ask her father. This guy looked like an old screamer, like a dog from a classic movie. If anyone came within a foot of his daughter, he would start barking like a bloodhound. It took me 3 years before he let me sit on their porch, and then another year just to call her. Every time I thought he was eavesdropping on a conversation, and before she could ask if I could take her out, he would yell, "No!" So believe me, I was completely shocked when I asked for permission to marry Megan, and he said, "Yes, son, you can." Son! This guy just called me son. For 6 years I've been called anything but son. But now, I'm his son. Go figure it out. For me, family life was amazing. Our honeymoon was incredible. Life with Megan was anything but boring. For the next 15 years, life was difficult but satisfying. We worked, had fun, shared intimate moments, and created a family. We had 3 children, Tommy, Jessica, and Paul, our little angels. After the 25th year of our life together, everything changed for the better. The only reason I didn't flee the country was because of the children. By that time, 2 of the 3 had already moved out, and the 3rd was about to follow them. Tommy attended the University of Florida, Jessica attended Knoxville State University, and Paul had just graduated from high school and was preparing to go to Gainesville to become an alligator. But as a young guy, Paul wanted to spend his last evening at home to the fullest. He became careless, tried to drive drunk, and crashed into a pole. As a result, he ended up in the hospital in critical condition. Megan and I rushed to the hospital. His spleen had been removed. He had lung damage and was in need of a kidney. His kidneys were too damaged, and he urgently needed a donor. The doctor asked if they could do blood work to see if I was a match. Megan gave us a strange look, like she was trying to figure something out. Then she said, "Shit, shit, shit. You don't need to bother. He's not Paul's father." I stepped back, staring at her. I moved to grab her, but the doctor stopped me, telling me this wasn't the time. I asked her what the hell she was talking about. The doctor told her to get Paul's real father here to save him. I turned and walked away. Then I stopped, turned back, dropped my wedding ring on the floor, and walked into the room to see Paul. I couldn't even process that he might not be my son right then. I just wanted him to get the help he needed. When Megan and the doctor came into the room, I turned and left. The doctor grabbed my arm and told me I needed to stay because Paul needed both of us right now. So, I stayed. Later that evening, Paul's father came in. About an hour after that, my brother Carlton came in. I was about to inform him of the situation when I noticed that his blood had already been taken for analysis. Paul's father was Megan's brother-in-law, my brother Carlton. Then he, the doctor, and Megan left the room, and that's when I realized the truth. Carlton came in, trying to explain what had happened, but I couldn't take it anymore. I left the room. It was too hard for me. Abby, Carlton's wife, was sitting in the waiting room with her head in her hands, crying. I didn't know if it was because of Paul or because she had just found out about Carlton and Megan. Either way, both situations were confusing. The doctor came up to me and asked if I could talk to him for a minute. He told me that I had to step up and be with Paul and Megan because they would need me. I asked him, "How exactly should I do this?" "You're a big man, right? Tell me how I should be around this woman. Did she just tell me that my son is actually my nephew? She's been sleeping with my brother for God knows how long, at least 18 years, since Paul became his son. And how am I even dealing with Carlton? I can't call him my brother anymore. What kind of brother sleeps with his brother's wife and leaves him to raise his children? But since you are a doctor, maybe you have something on this score. Maybe you have some kind of cheating glasses. Or maybe a pill after cheating that will rid me of my brother and her of my life. Do you know any way to erase her from my memory? No? I didn't think so. Now get out of my sight and try to cure Paul. You can't fix my marriage or my life." The doctor shook his head, then turned and walked back to Paul's room. I went up to Abby and asked her what Carlton had said to her. She said that all 3 of my children are from him. Carlton told her that Megan said I was infertile. This was unfamiliar to me, and I wondered how she could possibly know. I had only been hospitalized for one reason when I was 10 years old. Something was happening, and I needed to uncover the answers. At 11:30 the next morning, the doctor informed us that Paul would be all right. Carlton's kidney was a perfect match. As I was heading towards the exit, Megan and the doctor rushed towards me just as the door was closing. Megan tried to hold me back, but the doctor intervened. I felt like spitting in his face. Megan asked where I was going. What about our son Paul? The phrase "our son" struck me as ironic. I turned and walked away. I arrived at the house around 2:30 that afternoon, making a brief stop at Home Depot to pick up a couple of lock sets. Once there, I changed the house locks and began packing Megan's clothes. I had 4 bags ready before the first call came in. It was her father, wanting to visit and talk before I did something foolish. As if he understood what I was going through. Seriously, Dad, what reason would I have to act irresponsibly? Before he could say another word, I abruptly ended the call. While packing Megan's things, my mind drifted to Paul and everything that had happened, taking me back to our long discussions in psychology class. Nature versus nurture. Was Paul truly my son by DNA? In my heart, he definitely was. From his first moments, his first steps, the first time he caught a football, his first fight, his first date, his first kiss, and our talks about the birds and the bees, all those moments made him my son, didn't they? But when he really needed his father, the truth was, I wasn't there. When he needed both blood and a kidney, things I would have gladly given him, I couldn't help. In his genuine time of need, I could only sit there helpless because Megan turned out to be unfaithful. The moment the doctor said he needed a kidney, it became clear he wasn't my son. My family's name would continue. But what about my branch of the family tree? There wouldn't be a Harold Paxton branch. Of course, Carlton's branch had 7 offshoots, the 4 kids he had with Abby and the 3 with Megan, making Carlton the family patriarch. I had to stop thinking about all this for a while because I was giving myself a headache. I went to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and settled into my recliner. Just as I turned on the TV, I heard some cars arriving. I stayed still, sipping my beer, and listening to them knock on the door. It seemed like there were 4 or 5 people outside. They had been knocking for about 10 minutes when Megan arrived. I believe it was my dad who instructed her to use her key to unlock the door. I'm sure they were quite surprised when her key didn't work. After finishing my beer, I took my pistol from the desk, walked over, and opened the door. I asked my father what they wanted. He responded, "Why?" Since I was armed. I explained that the gun was to keep out intruders. I asked them again, "What do you want?" My dad acted as the spokesperson and asked if they could come in and talk to me. I agreed, provided that Carlton and Megan weren't with them. Megan stayed on the porch crying while Carlton tried to prove his manhood until he heard me pulling back the slide on my Desert Eagle. I think that was the moment they realized things weren't going to go as they had expected. Over the next 2 hours, they told me everything. Everyone knew except Abby and me. I couldn't believe that these people were my relatives. Abby understood how Megan felt. My father, the man who taught me how to behave with a cheating wife, now expected me to live with such a wife. It's strange that when you become a grandparent, you lose your mind. Son, she did what she had to do to give you the family you dreamed of. You need to calm down and understand how Megan felt. I didn't succeed, and I was going to try. I've had enough. Fuck them all. I have never been able to understand how a woman's desire to have a child justifies her going out and cheating in order to achieve this goal. Is there any difference for a man who wants to have a child with his wife, but finds that she cannot give birth to him? Oh, I forgot. Only women are allowed to cheat in such circumstances. It seems that only another woman can understand what it's like not to be able to give birth. I think men don't want a family. At this time, they do not find joy in taking care of their loved one, their soulmate for life. Then I guess I'm not a man, because I shouldn't be hurt. All the nonsense they were talking about was just that, nonsense, about how I needed to consider the kids and keep the family together. They fed me all that rubbish about a woman not feeling complete if she couldn't have children, and how women are emotional beings who need to procreate. Then they referred to it as a blessing. That's when I lost it, and told them all to get the feck out. She is a shit-cheating a girl of easy virtue and had my brother's babies. If that's considered a blessing, then I need to change my beliefs. It turns out, my mom told her that I couldn't have kids because I had yellow fever when I was 10. She told Megan, but forgot to tell me. What a mom. After I kicked them all out, about an hour later, the kids showed up. They said Megan had called them, but instructed them to come to her parents' house first. Instead, they came to my house first. I spent the next hour explaining everything that happened. I didn't hold anything back. Jessica didn't believe me. She called and scheduled an appointment for a DNA test. Then she was going to confront Megan. Tommy said it didn't matter because I am his father no matter what, but he went along with Jessica's plan because he needed to know. The next day, all of us went to the hospital to check on Paul and get our blood drawn. Afterward, Jessica visited Megan while Tommy and I took care of Paul for a few hours before returning home. Understandably, the atmosphere in the house was extremely tense over the following days. On the third day, we received a call from the hospital with the results. It turned out that only Jessica was biologically mine, dispelling any doubts about infertility. Tommy became enraged and left, as this revelation meant that Megan had been unfaithful since the second year of our marriage. It hadn't even been 2 years. After just 18 months, she became pregnant with Tommy's child. I filed for divorce on the same day the results arrived, handing the DNA evidence to my attorney. I didn't seek a 50-50 split. I wanted everything. You see, I'm a strong advocate for equal rights. When a man cheats, everyone demands, take him to the cleaners. The advice is to not just get angry, but to take everything. However, when a man is betrayed, the reaction is, what did you do? Or, are you sure? Maybe it's just hormones. People suggest getting her help instead of divorcing her. I can't tell you how many friends I lost in the days that followed. I also lost both my parents and in-laws, as they had known about the affair all along. In our final meeting, Megan requested 30 minutes alone. After 25 years of marriage and over 23 years of deceit, I couldn't bear to hear another lie, though who's keeping track? I couldn't sit through one more falsehood. Even during our last conversation, everything was uncertain. Harold, haven't I been a good wife to you? Harold, think about it. Have you missed out on anything? After all the love we've shared, do you really want to give up on us? I mean, seriously, Harold, why would you want to leave? I granted her 30 minutes, but ultimately, I asked her a single question. It wasn't a difficult one, but it was the only question she couldn't answer. I then spent the next 10 minutes summarizing everything that had occurred in the last 2 years of our marriage. After that, I asked Megan, why would I want to stay? Then I stood up and left. The divorce was finalized 90 days later. I wasn't required to pay alimony, child support, or anything else. Instead, Megan ended up paying me $350 a month in alimony for 5 years. There was no house to sell, so I gave the house to Jessica and now live there rent-free. Financially, I had no job and therefore no income. I quit my job the day before the DNA results came in. She had been unfaithful for over 20 years, and a judge was going to make me pay her for it. I have no money in the bank because I used it for Paul's medical bills. From nothing comes. One positive aspect was that Abby stopped by to inform me that her parents, along with Megan and Carlton, intend to surprise me into reconnecting and rebuilding our family. Abby and I spent the next 3 hours strategizing and having fun. Carlton was foolish because Abby had a significant figure. I won't disclose any further details because I plan to mention them again later. By the end of the day, Paul, Tommy, and I would be enjoying a cruise during their visit. Upon our return from the cruise, Jessica informed me that my lawyer was prepared to file a lawsuit against Carlton for 23 years of unpaid child support. We are seeking $350,000 per child to cover college, cars, and other expenses, as raising children is costly. Once the lawsuit was initiated, Abby proceeded to file for divorce. I never officially adopted Paul or Tommy because they didn't want to. They realized that I was their father, not by blood, but because of my love and presence in their lives. Paul mentioned that he couldn't call me a real cuckold just because his mother had problems and he didn't have them himself. Tommy agreed with him. 10 years have passed, and now I am 62 years old. I have children who are 5 and 10 years old. My wife Abby is 52 years old. Yes, I said to Abby. Although I will never openly admit it, I like spending Carlton's alimony on nice things for my children. And no, I didn't marry Abby out of revenge. It doesn't bother me at all that we're flaunting our relationship in front of Carlton. As for Megan, She told Jessica that she would wait forever, and someday she would bring me back. Even Jessica is amused by this. My parents are constantly pestering Jessica and Abby, saying, "Please invite Harold to visit us." They believe that we are going to die soon, and Harold will regret that he was not there. I am also angry at myself for not being a part of the lives of those who tried to deceive me by pretending to be my loved ones, although this is unlikely. I could think about forgiving them on their deathbed, but that's unlikely, especially since they're already 80 and 82 years old, and they have a Carlton. I have to leave. The kids are staying the night with Jessica and Paul. I've been extremely upset for the last 30 minutes, waiting for Abby to return. She went to load them into the car. If I'm still this upset in 4 hours, forget about going to the emergency room. I'll call the coroner.